Imagine living without worry, trusting completely in a higher power. In today's world of anxiety and uncertainty, Jesus' teachings provide profound peace. Welcome to our exploration of Matthew 6:25 to 34, where Jesus shares profound wisdom on living without anxiety. In this brief teaching, nestled within the celebrated Sermon on the Mount, Jesus invites us to shift our focus from earthly concerns to divine assurance. By refocusing on God's faithful provision, we can find peace amidst life's trials. Open your heart as we delve into these timeless instructions, invaluable both in biblical times and today. Are you ready to discover a path to tranquility, even when the world around feels uncertain? In the heart of the Gospel of Matthew, nestled within the Sermon on the Mount, we find Jesus speaking to his followers about worry and anxiety. The setting is key. Imagine a hillside where a gentle breeze brushes the grass, and the crowd listens to Jesus, captivated by his authority and wisdom. Jesus addresses common concerns of the time about food, clothing, and future security, mirroring our very own modern anxieties. The lives of his listeners were bound by Roman occupation and economic uncertainty, much like the world's geopolitical and economic instability today. Yet, amid these concerns, Jesus calls them, and us, toward a radical trust in God. He begins with a command that resonates through the ages: do not be anxious about your life. At first, such a directive might seem naive or unrealistic in a worry-filled world. Yet Jesus isn't advocating for irresponsibility, but rather a shift in perspective. Drawing from the world around him, Jesus uses vivid illustrations. He points to the birds, highlighting how they neither sow nor reap, yet are provided for by God. He asks the crowd to consider the wildflowers, which grow without toil or spin, yet possess a beauty surpassing even King Solomon's splendor. These examples aren't mere observations of nature, they are deep reminders of God's ongoing care and provision. Jesus goes deeper, addressing not just physical needs but the underlying issues of faith and trust. He reassures the crowd, emphasizing that worrying achieves nothing productive and cannot add to the span of their lives. He invites them to embrace a kingdom mindset, which values spiritual wealth over material accumulation. To the crowd living under Roman dominion and daily struggle, these words offered a radical new path, trusting not in what could be amassed or hoarded, but in a God who is aware of their every need. This message of trust stands in stark contrast to the constant urging of society, both ancient and modern, to accumulate and worry. As Jesus speaks, the crowd is enveloped in his words, pondering the possibilities of life unburdened by relentless anxiety. Today, his counsel remains ever relevant. In a world that often values productivity and possessions above peace, Jesus calls us to seek first God's kingdom and righteousness. Such a pursuit assures that all these things, our daily needs, will be added unto us. As we step back into the scene on the hillside, we understand that Jesus is not promising a life without challenges. Instead, he offers a life with a different focus, where trust in God redefines security and shifts our deepest fears. This profound invitation stands strong today, echoing across centuries, appealing to hearts yearning for peace amidst life's storms. To truly grasp the depth of Jesus' words on worry and anxiety, we must delve into the underlying messages and their implications for believers, both then and now. At the core of Jesus' teaching is a profound trust in God, seeing him as both provider and sustainer. This notion challenges the human instinct to control and accumulate, which are often fueled by fear of the unknown. Jesus' analogy of birds and flowers encapsulates a central truth. God's creation is lavishly provided for without worry, reflecting his care extending to us, his more cherished creation. In essence, If God meticulously cares for the birds and the ephemeral beauty of flowers, how much more will He provide and care for us? The message underscores God's intimate involvement in all aspects of life. Anxiety often deceives us into believing we are alone in our struggles. Jesus counters this deception by affirming that we are never outside God's concern. Consider the lilies of the field, unassuming yet decked in splendor greater than royal garments, showcasing God's magnificent provision in simplicity. The passage also calls into question where we draw our identity and security. Jesus reiterates that life is more than food and clothing, inviting his audience to identify themselves not by what they possess, but by their relationship with God. This reorientation shifts focus from transient material security to eternal spiritual wealth. Importantly, Jesus doesn't command passivity, instead, he encourages active reliance on God's faithfulness. By urging his followers to seek first God's kingdom, Jesus imparts a proactive pursuit. Align your priorities with divine will and purpose. This alignment doesn't negate hard work or diligence. Rather, it situates them within the context of God's overarching provision. Today, as then, humanity grapples with anxieties about the future and basic necessities. Jesus' teaching calls believers to examine where they place their ultimate trust. Through this passage, he draws a line between worldly concerns and heavenly assurances, inviting us to cultivate a heart that reflects confidence in God's unfailing provision. Moreover, Jesus' discourse underscores the futility of worry. By posing the rhetorical question, "Can any of you by worrying add a single moment to your lifespan?" Jesus highlights worry's impotence contrasted against God's omnipotence. It is a reminder that anxiety adds neither time nor value, but detracts from our spiritual and emotional well-being. What then does it mean to seek God's kingdom and righteousness? At its core, it involves prioritizing a relationship with God, pursuing justice and peace, and embodying Jesus' teachings in daily life. It is an invitation to live counterculturally, trusting in God's ability to meet needs in unexpected ways. The invitation Jesus extends is both simple and profound. Shift your focus from the uncertainty of the future to the certainty of God's love and provision today. By doing so, we step into a life marked by peace and trust, amidst a world often characterized by fear and scarcity. This transformative call to trust remains as powerful today as when it was first spoken, inviting us to a life of deeper faith and fewer worries. So, how can we actively incorporate Jesus' teaching against anxiety into our everyday lives? Let's explore practical steps that help anchor our trust in God amidst modern pressures and uncertainties. Firstly, cultivate a habit of daily gratitude. Begin each day acknowledging God's blessings, both big and small. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, we shift our mindset from scarcity to abundance, mirroring Jesus' perspective. Next, practice mindful prayer and meditation. Set aside times to quietly reflect on God's promises and His faithful provision throughout your life. This intentional pause not only deepens your relationship with God, but also calms your spirit, enabling a more peaceful response to life's pressures. Furthermore, simplify your life. Jesus' teachings prompt us to evaluate our priorities and possessions. Consider what truly matters and make conscious choices to reduce material and emotional clutter. This simplification can lead to a more focused and fulfilling life. Engage in community. Surround yourself with fellow believers who encourage and remind you of God's faithfulness. A supportive network can help combat feelings of isolation that exacerbate anxiety. Through shared wisdom and prayer, the burdens of worry are lightened. Another practical step is to embrace trust in action. Take the first step in faith, even when the entire path isn't visible. Trusting God often means moving forward despite uncertainties, believing that He holds your journey securely in His hands. Finally, remember Jesus' call to seek first God's kingdom. Allocate time for activities that align with divine purposes, such as serving others, pursuing justice, and fostering peace. As your life reflects God's priorities, you'll experience a profound sense of peace and purpose. Living free from anxiety doesn't mean the absence of challenges, but aligning those challenges under God's sovereign care. As we embrace His invitation to rest from worry, we step into a life marked by freedom, joy, and a deeper reliance on God's unfailing provision. Through gratitude, prayer, simplicity, community, actionable trust, and kingdom focused living, we will find that even in uncertain times, God's steadfast care remains our strongest assurance. In a world fraught with anxiety, Jesus offers a countercultural way: trust in God's provision. As we end our journey through Matthew 6:25 to 34, may we carry these truths in our hearts. Challenge yourself this week to embrace a life of trust over worry. Reflect upon God's faithfulness in your life and actively seek His kingdom. Share your stories of peace and provision with us in the comments below. Let us walk in the assurance that God knows our needs and will provide abundantly. If this message has touched you, consider subscribing for more gospel insights. May you find peace amidst life's uncertainties, holding fast to the assurances in Christ.